Fleet Admiral Kreshvar had seen many things in his 40 years of service to the Galactic Council. He had watched stars die and new worlds be born. He had commanded fleets in 3 major wars and negotiated peace treaties with species that spoke in colors instead of sounds. But nothing had prepared him for what his sensors were showing him now. The bridge of his flagship, the Stellar Dominance, was unusually quiet. His crew of various alien species stood frozen at their stations, staring at their displays with expressions of confusion and disbelief. The only sound was the steady hum of the ship's engines and the occasional beep from the sensor array. "Admiral," said Commander Thelix, his second-in-command, "the readings are confirmed. There is definitely something out there." Kreshvar's 4 eyes focused on the main display screen. What he saw made his blood run cold. A massive shape hung in space near the edge of the system, barely visible against the star field. The ship was enormous, larger than anything he had ever encountered in his long career. "How big is it?" he asked, trying to keep his voice steady. The sensor officer, a young Veltar named Kiksno, checked his instruments 3 times before answering. "Sir, the vessel measures approximately 15.7 kilometers in length. Its width appears to be 4.2 kilometers, and its height is 3.8 kilometers. The bridge fell silent again. Kreshvar felt his heart skip a beat. In all his years of service, the largest ship he had ever seen was the legendary Dreadnought, Voidbreaker, which measured a mere 2 kilometers from bow to stern. "This thing was 8 times larger." "That cannot be correct," said Commander Thelix. "No known species has the technology or resources to build something that massive." "The readings are accurate," Kiksno replied firmly. "I have run diagnostics on all sensor arrays. The ship is real, and it is exactly that large." Kreshvar studied the image on the screen. The vessel had a sleek, practical design that seemed almost simple compared to the elaborate decorations that most galactic civilizations added to their ships. It was painted white and gray, with clear geometric lines and no unnecessary ornaments. Large windows dotted its hull, glowing with warm yellow light. It looked more like a floating city than a warship. "What kind of energy readings are we getting?" the Admiral asked. "That is the strange part, sir," Kiksno said, his voice filled with wonder. "The power output is beyond our ability to measure accurately. Our instruments indicate that their main reactor produces more energy than our entire battle group combined." "Weapons?" asked Commander Thelix. "None detected, sir. At least nothing that looks like the weapons we know. But with a ship that size and that much power, they might not need traditional weapons." Kreshvar nodded grimly. A ship that large could simply ram through entire fleets and emerge unscathed. The kinetic energy alone would be devastating. "Sir," the communications officer called out, "we are receiving a transmission from the unknown vessel." "Put it on the main screen," the Admiral ordered. The image of the mysterious ship was replaced by the face of an alien creature unlike any in the galactic databases. The being had pale skin, brown hair, and 2 forward-facing eyes. It smiled, showing white teeth, and spoke in a pleasant voice that the universal translator quickly converted to standard galactic. "Greetings, unknown vessels. This is Captain Sarah Chen of the Terran exploration ship Prometheus Unbound. We come in peace and are happy to make contact with new civilizations. Please identify yourselves and state your intentions." Kreshvar was struck by how calm and friendly the alien captain appeared. There was no hint of aggression or superiority in her manner, despite commanding what was clearly the most powerful vessel in known space. "This is Fleet Admiral Kreshvar of the Galactic Council 5th Survey Fleet," he replied. "We are conducting routine patrol operations in this sector. We welcome peaceful contact with your species, but we must ask about the nature of your vessel. Our sensors indicate it is of unprecedented size and power." Captain Chen tilted her head, slightly looking puzzled. "I apologize, Admiral, but I am not sure what you mean. The Prometheus is a standard Colossus-Class exploration vessel. It is designed for long-range scientific missions and first-contact situations like this one. We carry a crew of 12,000 and have facilities for extended deep space operations." 12,000, Commander Thelix whispered in shock. The entire 5th Survey Fleet carried fewer than 8,000 personnel. "Captain Chen," Kreshvar said carefully, "your ship appears to be larger than any vessel in our experience. May I ask how your people were able to construct something of this magnitude?" "Oh, you mean the size?" Captain Chen laughed, a pleasant sound that somehow made the situation even more unsettling. "Well, humans have always believed in building things to last. When we decided to explore beyond our solar system, we wanted to make sure our crews had everything they needed for long missions. The Prometheus has complete manufacturing facilities, hydroponics bays for food production, recreational areas, schools for crew families, medical facilities, and extensive scientific laboratories. We find it more efficient to build one large, self-sufficient vessel than many smaller ones. Crew families? Kreshvar asked weakly. Of course. Deep space missions can last for years, or even decades. It would be cruel to separate families for such long periods. We have residential areas for about 4,000 family members, plus all the support facilities they need. There are parks, schools, libraries, theaters, and even a small lake for recreation. The Admiral felt dizzy. This alien was casually describing a vessel that was essentially a mobile civilization. No wonder their sensors were having trouble categorizing it. Captain Chen, he said, would it be possible for a small delegation to visit your ship? We would very much like to learn more about your people and your technology. We would be delighted to receive visitors, she replied warmly. I should warn you that our artificial gravity is calibrated for human physiology, so you might experience some discomfort. Also, our atmospheric mixture might not be suitable for all species, though we do have environmental suits available. We appreciate your consideration, Kreshvar said. We will prepare a diplomatic team immediately. Wonderful. I will have one of our shuttles escort your delegation to our main docking bay. Fair warning, though, the docking bay is quite large. We use it to service our exploration craft and cargo vessels, so please do not be alarmed by the size. After the transmission ended, the bridge remained silent for a long moment. Finally, Commander Thalix spoke up. Admiral, what have we discovered? Kreshvar stared at the image of the massive human ship on his screen. In his 4 decades of military service, he had learned to recognize different types of threats. This was not a warship or an invasion force. It was something far more dangerous to the established order of the galaxy. It was progress. Contact the Galactic Council immediately, he ordered. Tell them we have made first contact with a species that has fundamentally different ideas about what is possible. And, Commander? Yes, sir? Recommend that they sit down before reading the report. The news traveled faster than any ship in the galaxy. Within hours of Admiral Kreshvar's initial report, emergency sessions were being called in government buildings across hundreds of worlds. The message was simple but terrifying. Humanity had built something impossible. On the capital world of the hegemony, Defense Minister Zaktul stared at the holographic display showing the human vessel. The image had been transmitted through 17 different relay stations, each operator adding their own notes of disbelief. The Prometheus Unbound hung in space like a metal mountain, dwarfing everything around it. This cannot be real, he muttered for the 100th time. His aide, a nervous young officer named Plexon, shifted uncomfortably. Sir, the reports have been verified by 3 independent sources. The Galactic Council's 5th Survey Fleet, a merchant convoy that happened to be passing through the system, and a deep space monitoring station all confirmed the same measurements. Zaktul turned away from the display and walked to his office. Window. Below, the capital city of the hegemony spread out in all directions, its towering spires reaching toward the sky. Each building represented centuries of architectural advancement and careful resource management. The largest structures in the city could house perhaps 50,000 inhabitants. The human ship could hold 4 times that number. What do our intelligence analysts say? He asked. They are confused, sir. According to our data, humanity achieved faster-than-light travel only 37 years ago. Most species require at least 2 centuries to develop the industrial capacity for vessels larger than a kilometer. The humans appear to have skipped several technological development phases entirely. Zaktul nodded grimly. The hegemony's own, largest vessel, the battleship Iron Fist, measured 1.8 kilometers and had taken 40 years to build. It was considered a marvel of engineering, requiring resources from 12 different star systems and the combined efforts of billions of workers. Meanwhile, Captain Sarah Chen of the human ship had casually mentioned that the Prometheus Unbound was standard for their exploration fleet. Get me a connection to Admiral Kreshvar, Zaktul ordered. I want to know everything about these humans. The holographic image of the fleet admiral appeared moments later. The veteran officer looked tired and somewhat overwhelmed. Minister, Zaktul, Kreshvar said with a formal salute. I assume you want an update on the human situation. Indeed. What have you learned from your visit to their vessel? The admiral's expression became even more troubled. Minister, I hardly know where to begin. The humans allowed a full diplomatic team to tour their ship yesterday. What we found defies every assumption we have made about space travel and resource management. Explain. Their docking bay alone is larger than most space stations. They use it to house dozens of smaller craft, including what they call shuttles, that are actually larger than our patrol ships. Their manufacturing facilities can build everything from medical equipment to spacecraft components. They have massive hydroponic farms that produce enough food to feed their entire crew with surplus left over. Zaktul felt a cold sensation in his stomach. What about their crew? Are they warriors? Engineers? That is perhaps the most unsettling part, Kreshvar replied. They are just people. Scientists, technicians, teachers, artists, cooks, gardeners. Many of them brought their families along because, as Captain Chen explained, deep space missions are more pleasant when you can share them with loved ones. Families, Zaktul repeated weakly, on a warship. It is not a warship, sir. That is what makes this so disturbing. The Prometheus Unbound is purely a civilian vessel designed for exploration and scientific research. When I asked Captain Chen about their military vessels, she seemed confused by the question. She said that human military ships are built for different purposes and are rarely seen outside their home system. The defense minister sat down heavily in his chair. If this was what humans built for peaceful exploration, what did their military vessels look like? Sir, Plexon interrupted, we are receiving similar reports from other governments. The Silicon Concord has gone into emergency session. The Kethvar Empire has recalled all their fleets to defensive positions. 3 smaller governments have formally requested hegemony protection. Zaktul was not surprised. The balance of power that had maintained galactic stability for over 1,000 years was based on the assumption that all civilizations faced similar limitations in terms of resources and technology. No single species could build vessels large enough to threaten entire star systems because such construction was simply impossible. The humans had made that assumption obsolete overnight. Admiral, Zaktul said, I need you to find out everything. You can about human industrial capacity. How many ships like this do they have? What are their intentions? Are they planning to expand beyond their current territory? I have been trying to gather that information, sir, but the humans are frustratingly open about everything. Captain Chen freely shared technical specifications, crew manifests, mission, parameters, and detailed star charts of their territory. She even offered to arrange cultural exchange programs. That sounds encouraging. Perhaps. But their casual attitude about sharing sensitive information suggests they have nothing to fear from us. Minister, Captain Chen mentioned that the Prometheus is one of 47 vessels in their deep space exploration fleet. She also said that their home system has over 300 ships of various sizes currently under construction. Zaktul closed his eyes and tried to process this information. 300 ships. If even half of them were the size of the Prometheus, unbound, humanity possessed more naval power than the rest of the galaxy combined. What are their plans for expansion? He asked quietly. They want to explore, Kreshvar replied. That appears to be their primary motivation. They are curious about other species and eager to learn about different cultures and technologies. Captain Chen expressed particular interest in artistic traditions and philosophical systems. They want to explore, Zaktul repeated. With ships the size of cities. Yes, sir. The defense minister stared at the image of the human vessel still displayed on his wall. Its peaceful appearance somehow made it more threatening than any traditional warship. This was not a weapon pointed at the galaxy's throat. It was something worse, proof that everything they thought they knew about the limits of technology and civilization was wrong. Plexon, he said finally, schedule an emergency meeting with the Hegemony Council. We need to discuss our response to this development. What kind of response, sir? Zaktul looked at the human ship one more time, noting its clean lines and efficient design. I am not sure. How do you prepare for contact with a species that considers the impossible to be routine? How do you negotiate with people who casually accomplish things that your civilization's greatest engineers say cannot be done? As if summoned by his words, his communication system chimed with an incoming message. The transmission was from Captain Chen of the Prometheus Unbound. Greetings, Minister Zaktul, she said with that same friendly smile that was becoming disturbingly familiar across the galaxy. Admiral Kreshvar mentioned that you might be interested in establishing diplomatic relations between our peoples. We would be delighted to welcome a formal delegation from the hegemony. I should mention that we will be hosting similar delegations from several other governments over the next few weeks. We believe that open communication is the foundation of peaceful cooperation. The message ended, leaving Zaktul staring at a blank screen. Somehow he suspected that peaceful cooperation was exactly what the humans would achieve, whether the galaxy was ready for it or not. Supreme Commander Valesh of the Kethvar Empire stood before the massive construction yards of Keth Prime, watching thousands of workers swarm over the skeleton of what would become the largest warship in galactic history, the Galaxy Crusher. was designed to be 3 kilometers long, armed with enough firepower to destroy entire fleets, and protected by armor thick enough to withstand direct hits from stellar-class weapons. It was also completely pointless. "Commander," said his chief engineer, "we have received another intelligence report from the human territories." Valesh did not turn around. He had been dreading these reports for weeks now. Each one contained information that made their massive shipbuilding project seem more futile. "Tell me," he said quietly. "The humans have launched 7 more vessels in the past month. 3 of them are larger than the Prometheus Unbound. The largest measures 23 kilometers in length and appears to be designed for deep space colonization. Our analysts believe it can transport and establish an entire planetary colony, complete with all necessary infrastructure." Valesh finally turned away from the construction yards. In the 6 months since first contact with humanity, every major government in the galaxy had begun emergency military programs. The assumption was simple. If the humans could build ships that large, they were obviously preparing for conquest. The logical response was to build bigger ships to counter the threat, but the humans were not building warships. "What about their military construction?" he asked, though he already knew the answer. "No change, sir. Human military vessels remain within their home system. Our long-range sensors have detected approximately 60 ships that appear to be designed for combat, but they are all relatively small. The largest military vessel we have observed measures only 2 kilometers. 2 kilometers, Valesh repeated. The humans' largest warship was smaller than the Galaxy Crusher, but somehow this fact provided no comfort. "Sir," the engineer continued, hesitantly, "there is something else. Our intelligence operatives report that the humans are confused by our military buildup. They have repeatedly asked their diplomatic contacts why so many governments are suddenly building larger warships. And what do we tell them? Our diplomats have tried to explain that large vessels are typically associated with military power, but the humans seem genuinely puzzled by this concept. They point out that their exploration and colony ships need to be large to carry all the necessary equipment and personnel for long-term missions. They cannot understand why anyone would think size equals aggression." Valesh walked to his office window and looked out at the sprawling capital city of the Kethvar Empire. In the distance, he could see the launch platforms, where their new super dreadnoughts were being prepared for space trials. Billions of credits and countless work hours had been poured into these projects, all based on the assumption that humanity was preparing for war. But what if they were wrong? "Commander," his aide announced, "we have received a formal invitation from the human government." "What kind of invitation?" "They are hosting what they call a cultural exchange festival in their home system. Representatives from over 40 different species have been invited to visit Earth and other human worlds to learn about human civilization and share information about their own cultures." Valesh frowned. "That sounds like intelligence gathering." "Perhaps, sir, but the invitation includes complete technical specifications for all human vessels that will be present at the festival. They have also provided detailed star charts, industrial capacity reports, and population data for all human colonies. If this is intelligence gathering, they are remarkably open about their own capabilities." The Supreme Commander sat down at his desk and activated his personal computer. The screen filled with reports from intelligence operatives across human space. For months, his best agents had been trying to uncover evidence of secret weapons programs, hidden military installations, or signs of aggressive expansion. They had found nothing. "What about the other governments?" he asked. "Are they still building larger ships?" "The hegemony has begun construction of 5 new super battleships. The Silicon Concord is developing what they call Titan killer vessels. Even the peaceful Ashanti Federation has started building ships twice their previous maximum size. Everyone is trying to match human capabilities. And the humans. They continue building exploration ships, colony vessels, and research platforms. Last week, they launched something called a mobile university that is larger than our entire orbital shipyard. It is designed to travel between star systems and provide advanced education to colonies that are too small to support their own institutions." Valesh rubbed his temples. The galaxy was caught in an arms race with a species that was not participating in it. Every government was pouring resources into military development to counter a threat that did not seem to exist. Meanwhile, the humans continued their peaceful expansion, casually accomplishing feats of engineering that everyone else considered impossible. "Sir," the aide said, "there is one more thing. Our spies report that human children are taught advanced mathematics and engineering as part of their basic education. Their schools have better laboratories than many of our universities. They consider space travel and large-scale construction to be normal parts of their civilization." "Children," Valesh muttered. "The humans were not building massive ships because they were preparing for war. They were building them because they did not know how to build small ones. Their entire civilization was scaled for abundance and growth rather than efficiency and resource conservation. His communication system chimed with an incoming message. The face of Captain Sarah Chen appeared on his screen, looking as friendly and unthreatening as always. "Greetings, Supreme Commander Valesh," she said warmly. "I hope this message finds you well. I wanted to personally invite you to visit our Cultural Exchange Festival next month. We have prepared special exhibitions showcasing Kethvar art and philosophy based on the information your diplomatic team shared with us. We are particularly excited to learn more about your species' legendary craftsmanship." She paused and tilted her head slightly. "I also wanted to ask about the reports we have been receiving regarding increased military construction throughout the galaxy. Several human researchers are studying interstellar politics and are curious about what has prompted this development. If there is some threat we are unaware of, we would be happy to assist in any defensive efforts." The message ended, leaving Valesh staring at a blank screen. The most powerful military force in galactic history was offering to help defend against threats they did not know about. The irony was almost painful. "Sir," his chief engineer said quietly, "what are your orders regarding the Galaxy Crusher?" Valesh looked out the window at the massive construction project one more time. Thousands of workers were laboring around the clock to build a weapon designed to fight an enemy that did not exist. The Kethvar Empire was spending 30% of its annual budget on a ship that would be obsolete before it was completed. "Continue construction," he said finally, "but modify the design." "How, sir?" "Remove half the weapons and add civilian facilities, laboratories, living quarters, recreational areas. If we are going to build ships the size of small moons, we might as well use them for something productive." The engineer looked confused. "You want to turn our super dreadnought into an exploration vessel?" "I want to turn it into something useful," Valesh replied. "The humans have shown us that the purpose of large ships is not to destroy things, but to build them. Perhaps it is time we learned that lesson." As he spoke, another report arrived on his desk. The humans had just launched their largest vessel, yet a 30-kilometer mobile research station designed to study stellar phenomena. It was staffed by over 50,000 scientists from dozens of different species, all working together on projects that would benefit the entire galaxy. The humans were not conquering the galaxy through force. They were conquering it through example, showing everyone what was possible when a civilization stopped thinking in terms of limitations and started thinking in terms of potential. And somehow, that was far more terrifying than any weapon they could have built. Dr. Vex High, the galaxy's leading expert in megastructure engineering, stood at the observation deck of the transport vessel carrying the joint alien scientific expedition to the Sol system. Through the reinforced transparasteel window, he could see their destination, the human shipyards of Luna. What he was looking at should not have been possible. The orbital construction facilities stretched for hundreds of kilometers around Earth's moon, a vast network of fabrication plants, assembly, docks, and support stations. Dozens of ships in various stages of completion hung in the vacuum like metal islands. The smallest of them was larger than the transport that carried his expedition. "Professor Vex High," said Dr. Millax, a theoretical physicist from the Silicon. "Concord, are you recording this?" "Every detail," Vex High replied, though his hands shook slightly as he operated his instruments. "Though I suspect no one will believe the measurements." The expedition included 23 of the galaxy's most brilliant minds, representing 12 different species and covering every field from engineering to economics. They had come to Earth at humanity's invitation, hoping to understand how a relatively young civilization had achieved what seemed impossible. "Look at that," whispered Engineer Koltar from the hegemony. She pointed to a construction dock where human workers were assembling what appeared to be a city-sized vessel. "They are installing a complete ecosystem in that section. I can see rivers, forests, and what looks like a mountain range." Dr. Vex High focused his instruments on the area she indicated. The readings confirmed her observation. The humans were not just building a ship. They were creating a miniature world capable of supporting millions of inhabitants for centuries. "Welcome to Luna Station," came a cheerful voice over the communication system. "This is Captain Rodriguez of the Construction Authority. We have cleared Docking Bay 7 for your visit. Please be aware that the bay is quite large, so do not be alarmed if your vessel appears small once inside." The transport pilot, an experienced Veltar named Korixasa, had flown ships into every major space station in the galaxy. He considered himself an expert at docking procedures, but as their small vessel entered the human docking bay, his confidence evaporated. The bay was enormous, large enough to hold a dozen ships their size with room to spare. Automated systems gently guided them to a landing platform, while humans in work suits moved about their tasks, paying little attention to the alien visitors. To them, apparently, this was just another routine day. Captain Rodriguez met them at the airlock. She was a middle-aged human woman with graying hair and kind eyes that crinkled when she smiled. She wore a simple work uniform that looked more practical than impressive. "Welcome to Luna Station," she said warmly. "I hope your journey was comfortable. We are excited to show you around our facilities and answer any questions you might have." "Captain Rodriguez," Dr. Vexhai said carefully, "we are grateful for this opportunity. My colleagues and I have studied megastructure engineering for centuries, but we admit that human construction methods are beyond our current understanding." "Oh, you are too kind," she replied with a laugh. "We just build things the way they need to be built. Our philosophy is simple. If something is worth doing, it is worth doing right. And doing it right usually means building it big enough to handle anything you might need." She led them through a series of corridors that seemed to stretch on forever. Along the way, they passed workshops where human technicians casually assembled components that would be considered engineering marvels by galactic standards. A group of workers was installing a power core that could supply energy to an entire city. They chatted and joked as they worked, treating the device like any ordinary piece of equipment. "How do you manufacture components of this size?" asked Dr. Milax. "Well," Captain Rodriguez said thoughtfully, "we learned a long time ago that it is more efficient to make big things in big factories. Our main fabrication plant can produce hull sections up to 2 kilometers long in a single piece. It is much easier than trying to weld together thousands of smaller sections." Dr. Vexhai felt dizzy. The largest manufacturing facility in hegemony, space, could produce hull sections measuring 50 meters. The humans were working on a scale 40 times larger. "What about resource management?" asked Engineer Koltar. "Surely projects of this magnitude require careful allocation of materials?" "Not really," Captain Rodriguez replied with a shrug. "We set up automated mining operations in our asteroid belt about 50 years ago. The robots extract and process more raw materials than we can use, so we usually have a surplus. Our main challenge is finding places to store everything." The group stopped walking. Several of the alien scientists began whispering among themselves in their native languages. The concept of having too many resources was alien to most galactic civilizations. "You have more materials than you need?" Dr. Vexhai asked weakly. "Oh yes. Our asteroid belt contains enough metal to build millions of ships like the ones you see here. We have barely touched the available resources. That is why we can afford to build ships large enough to be completely self-sufficient. If you have plenty of materials, you might as well use them to make life comfortable for your crews." They entered an observation lounge that overlooked the main construction area. Through massive windows, they could see dozens of human vessels in various stages of completion. Workers moved about in zero gravity, using advanced tools to shape metal and install complex systems. The scale of the operation was breathtaking. "This facility," Captain Rodriguez said proudly, "can complete about 12 major vessels per year, along with hundreds of smaller craft. We have 6 other stations like this in our system, plus the main shipyards around Earth and Mars." 12 major vessels, Dr. Milax repeated. "Per year. From one facility." "That is right. Would you like to see the ship we launched last week? The New Horizons is one of our latest colony vessels. It can transport 2 million people, along with everything needed to establish a completely self-sufficient civilization on a new world." Alien scientists exchanged glances. The largest colony ship in galactic space could transport perhaps 50,000 people, and only with careful rationing of resources. "How do you feed 2 million people during interstellar travel?" asked a biologist from the Ashanti Federation. "The ship has complete agricultural decks that can produce enough food for 5 million people," Captain Rodriguez explained. "We always build in plenty of extra capacity. You never know when you might pick up refugees or need to support additional populations." Dr. Vexhai sat down heavily in one of the lounge chairs. His entire understanding of engineering was being challenged. For centuries, galactic civilization had been built on the principle of efficiency, using the minimum resources necessary to achieve a goal. The humans had apparently decided that this principle was wrong. "Captain," he said, "may I ask why your people build on such a massive scale? What drives this approach to construction?" Rodriguez looked thoughtful for a moment. "I suppose it comes from our history," she said. "Humans have always been explorers and builders. When we decided to go to the stars, we wanted to make sure we could take our whole civilization with us. A ship is not just a way to get from one place to another. It is a home for the people who travel in it. And homes should be comfortable, spacious, and equipped with everything you might need." "But the resource costs must be enormous," protested Engineer Koltar. "Not really," Rodriguez replied. When you build on this scale, you achieve massive economies of scale. It actually costs less per person to build one ship for 2 million people than to build 40 ships for 50,000 each. Plus, the larger ship is more reliable, more comfortable, and more capable of handling emergencies. She gestured toward the construction area. Every ship you see out there represents thousands of people who will live comfortable, productive lives while exploring the galaxy. We think that is worth the investment. Dr. Vexhai realized that he was witnessing something unprecedented in galactic history. The humans had not just solved the technical challenges of building massive structures, they had solved the philosophical challenges. They had rejected the idea of limitations and embraced the concept of abundance. "Captain Rodriguez," he said quietly, "I think your people may have accidentally revolutionized the entire galaxy." "How so?" "You have shown us that the impossible is merely difficult. Every other civilization has been constrained by the belief that resources are scarce and construction must be efficient. You have proven that neither assumption is necessarily true." Captain Rodriguez smiled. "Well, if that helps other people build better lives for themselves, we are happy to share our methods. That is what the Cultural Exchange Festival is all about. We want everyone to benefit from human innovations, just as we hope to learn from other civilizations." As they continued their tour, Dr. Vexhai began to understand that humanity had not just built bigger ships. They had built a completely different kind of civilization, one based on the radical idea that there was enough for everyone if you thought big enough to make it possible. The implications were staggering. If other species adopted human construction, methods, and philosophy, the entire structure of galactic society would change. Scarcity-based economics would become obsolete. Competition for resources would be replaced by cooperation for abundance. 6 months had passed since the galaxy learned about humanity, and Captain Sarah Chen was starting to understand that something important had changed. She stood on the observation deck of the Prometheus Unbound as her ship approached the Nexus Station, the primary trading hub of the Outer Rim territories. What she saw through the viewport was not what she had expected. The station had grown. What had once been a modest facility serving a few dozen systems was now a sprawling complex of interconnected modules and docking arms. Ships of every size and design crowded the space around it, and many of them were much larger than anything she had seen in previous visits to this sector. "Captain," said Commander Park, her first officer, "Traffic Control is requesting permission to assign us a docking bay. They say they have enlarged their facilities to accommodate vessels of our size." "Our size?" Chen asked, puzzled. "The Prometheus is not particularly large. Any standard commercial dock should be able to handle us." "That is what I told them, ma'am. But they insist that they have prepared special facilities for Colossus-Class vessels and larger." Chen frowned. The term Colossus-Class had somehow become the galactic standard for describing human ships, even though humans themselves did not use such classifications. To them, ships were simply built to the size needed for their intended purpose. "Very well," she said. "Accept their assignment." As the Prometheus Unbound approached its designated berth, Chen noticed that several alien ships were following them. This had become a common occurrence throughout human space. Other species seemed fascinated by human vessels and often requested permission to observe their operations. "Captain," the communications officer called out, "we are receiving a transmission from the Kethvar freighter Iron Current. Captain Velnash is requesting permission to come aboard." "Of course," Chen replied. She had met Captain Velnash during a previous trade mission and found him to be an intelligent and thoughtful individual. "Invite him to join us for dinner." 3 hours later, Chen sat in her private dining room with the Kethvar captain and her senior officers. Captain Velnash was explaining the changes that had swept through his sector of the galaxy. "It started with the cargo capacity," he said, gesturing with one of his 4 arms. "Human transport vessels can carry more goods in a single trip than our entire merchant fleet combined. Traditional trade routes became obsolete overnight. I hope that has not caused economic hardship," Chen said with concern. "Quite the opposite," Velnash replied, with what Chen had learned was the Kethvar equivalent of a smile. "Human traders do not compete with us. They create new opportunities. Your cargo ships are so large that they can afford to transport goods at prices that seemed impossible before. Worlds that could never afford imported luxuries now have access to products from across the galaxy." Commander Park leaned forward. "What kind of changes has this caused?" "Everything has changed," Velnash said. "The hegemony has begun construction of what they call mega-freighters based on human designs. The Silicon Concord is building research vessels larger than their former battleships. Even the conservative Ashanti Federation has announced plans for ships 10 times their previous maximum size." Chen felt a strange sense of unease. Are these military developments? No, Captain. That is what makes this so remarkable. The arms race that began after first contact with humanity has evolved into something entirely different. Governments realized that building larger weapons was pointless when humans were not building weapons at all. Instead, they are building larger everything else. Everything else? Research ships, colony vessels, mobile hospitals, traveling universities, mobile manufacturing plants. The Kethvar Empire's new flagship is a 30-kilometer mobile city designed to bring advanced infrastructure to developing worlds. It can establish industrial facilities, schools, hospitals, and communication networks in any system within months. Chen tried to process this information. That sounds like a positive development. It is revolutionary, Velnash said. For the first time in galactic history, we are thinking in terms of abundance rather than scarcity. Human philosophy has shown us that the galaxy contains enough resources for everyone if we are willing to think big enough to use them efficiently. What about the governments that oppose these changes? Most have adapted, Velnash replied. Those that have not are finding themselves increasingly irrelevant. The old model of carefully managing limited resources cannot compete with the new model of creating unlimited resources. After dinner, Chen walked with Velnash to the docking bay, where his ship was berthed. The Kethvar freighter was impressive by pre-contact standards, measuring nearly 800 meters in length. Next to the Prometheus Unbound, it looked like a small shuttle. Captain Chen, Velnash said as they reached his ship, may I ask you a personal question? Of course. Do humans understand what they have done? Chen considered the question. I am not sure what you mean. Your people have accidentally conquered the galaxy without firing a single shot. You have made traditional military power obsolete. By demonstrating that construction capacity is more important than destructive capacity, you have forced every civilization to reconsider their fundamental assumptions about what is possible. We have not conquered anything, Chen protested. We are simply exploring and trying to make friends with other species. Exactly, Velnash said. That is what makes this conquest so complete. You have not imposed human rule on the galaxy. You have imposed human thinking, and human thinking is far more powerful than human weapons could ever be. As the Kethvar captain departed, Chen found herself troubled by his words. She returned to her quarters and activated her personal communication system, establishing a connection with Earth. The face of Admiral Martinez, head of Human Deep Space Operations, appeared on her screen. Captain Chen, good to see you. How is the exploration mission proceeding? Very well, sir, but I have some concerns. I have been receiving reports that our presence in the galaxy has caused significant changes in local civilizations. Some species are rebuilding their entire industrial infrastructure based on human methods. Is that a problem? I am not sure, sir. Captain Velnash of the Kethvar suggested that we have inadvertently conquered the galaxy through our example, rather than through force. Admiral Martinez looked thoughtful. Captain, what do you think conquest means? Forcing others to submit to your will through superior power. And have we done that? Chen considered the question. No, sir. We have simply shared our technology and philosophy with anyone who was interested. Then I would say we have not conquered anyone. We have offered them choices. If they choose to adopt human methods, that is their decision. If those methods improve their lives, then everyone benefits. But sir, we are fundamentally changing galactic civilization. All contact between different cultures results in change, Captain. The question is whether the change is beneficial. From what I have observed, other species are using human innovations to build better lives for their people. They are exploring more effectively, colonizing more successfully, and trading more efficiently. These seem like positive developments. After the conversation ended, Chen stood at her quarters viewport, looking out at the busy space around Nexus Station. Ships of a dozen different species moved through the traffic patterns, many of them built using principles learned from humanity. In the distance, she could see a massive hegemony vessel that appeared to be some kind of mobile research facility, working alongside smaller craft from various civilizations. She realized that Admiral Martinez was right. Humanity had not conquered the galaxy. They had inspired it. They had shown other species that their limitations were often self-imposed, and that thinking bigger was the first step toward achieving more. The galaxy was changing, but it was changing because its inhabitants wanted to build better lives for themselves. Humanity had simply provided an example of what was possible when a civilization stopped accepting limitations and started embracing potential. Captain, Commander Park's voice came over the intercom. We have received a transmission from the Galactic Council. They are requesting our presence at a special session next month. They want to discuss formalizing trade agreements and cooperation protocols with humanity. What kind of protocols? According to the message, they want to establish guidelines for what they call abundance-based economics. They also want to discuss joint exploration projects and shared research initiatives. Chen smiled. The galaxy was learning to think like humans, big, optimistic, and focused on what could be built rather than what might be destroyed. Set course for the Council Worlds, she ordered. And Commander, send a message to Earth. Tell them that the galaxy is ready to grow up. As the Prometheus Unbound departed Nexus Station, Chen reflected on the strange turn of events that had brought them to this point. Humanity had set out to explore the galaxy and make contact with alien civilizations. Instead, they had accidentally taught the galaxy to dream bigger than it ever had before, and somehow that seemed like exactly the right kind of accident to have.